Welcome back to Security Cleared Jobs, Who's Hiring and How. Today's episode features a conversation from ClearedJobs.Net's Military Monday webinar series.
Welcome to Military Monday with ClearedJobs.Net. We are so excited to have you here with us. We're going to be talking to Cassondra VanVliet from ITC Defense here in just a second. We've talked a little bit beforehand to kind of get things going. You're not in the military, but you grew up as a military person. So you've got, I was a military brat myself, but you still have that passion. So we've got a lot of great tips and thoughts because you're also in the HR world and you're a recruiter. And so you see it from both sides, right?
I see it from both sides. And I don't even go as far to call myself an Army brat because I was very blessed that when I was born, that was kind of the end of theirs. And so we stayed in one spot. But Clarksville, Tennessee is very, very a military affiliated town. It was embedded into, our high schools. It was our neighbors, it was our friends, and, it was all of my dad's coworkers. And so I was very familiar with base and kind of just grew up in that realm without, myself having to join to understand. So
well, we look forward to getting some of your good thoughts on how veterans can do a better job of navigating a transition from the military into the private sector. Let's start by talking about ITC Defense. You guys do logistics, so you do a whole bunch of stuff over there.
So our headquarters is in North Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
And then our kind of like secondary biggest office is here in Huntsville. And that's where myself, my recruiting specialist, and our VP of BD have a presence down here. And we have quite a good presence of just employees who support the sites. And there's some, other locations as far as where the jobs are located. There's quite a few in Texas and in Florida and up in Lexington Park. So, and then we got a little bit kind of dispersed all over the place with some remote opportunities. So, but we do cybersecurity, information technology, supply chain management, systems engineering and integration, program management, operations and logistics, and software engineering mostly. So
that's a ton of stuff, and it's in a lot of places too. I mean, and so I can really see how the veteran community would be interested in ITC Defense because it does cover lots of different things. You're not pigeonholed into just one thing or one spot. So let's start talking a little bit, Cassie, about the transition experience. And one of the things that, from your perspective, and you talk to veterans all the time, is expectations, right? Tell us more about what you mean by that. What should we be thinking about?
One of the things, and Bob, we talked about this in our call, and so I'll try to do it as nicely and as gently as I can. One of the conversations that I have frequently, especially the higher in rank, I noticed the higher in rank that we go, the harder these conversations can be. It's just the expectations of what that transition looks like, what their career is going to look like, what salary ranges are tied to jobs in, this more civilian side, whether that's contracting or not. I've had conversations where transitioning members wanted a salary that equaled where they were at currently, but they were including, the BAH, the uniform allowances, their, all the kind of ad hoc items and payments they were encompassing in that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't translate to over here. And kind of having the conversation with them just to set those realistic expectations, pulling up, information and showing why one location might have a higher salary range than another location, the cost of living and things like that. Google search, what is the average salary for whatever position you're looking for in a certain location. It's not always going to be perfect or exact, but it gives you an idea. I know for me personally, money's probably not my favorite thing to talk about with anybody, whether that's for myself or I can do it very well for other people. But I think it's hard when we are trying to advocate for ourselves when we're talking about putting a dollar value on ourselves. And so just, say, hey, is there a defined salary range for this position? Sometimes, and this is twofold, because on the recruiter side, sometimes they can't share that information. And one thing that people don't know, salary information is proprietary information. For example, you'll see salary ranges on job postings. You ever wonder why they're so wildly different? Like they are a huge range, and you're like, okay, that's, and everybody always puts the number over here when I want to tell you that's not That's not the real number. Because if there's other competing companies and they're wanting to go for the same work, they're wanting to go for the same contract, they can go and take that information and use that in their proposals and end up beating, people out. And so salary information is proprietary. And so sometimes they can't get that information, right? But what I like to do, and what my answer always is, everybody has a dollar amount. Everybody knows what pays their bills, what keeps their lights on, what, keeps their cost, what their cost of living is and what keeps their lifestyle. And so let's, find out what that amount is and kind of go from there. Because if I know, again, if my job pays $100,000, but you tell me you want $200,000, like we're never going to meet in the middle on that one.
Yeah.
But if my job pays $100,000 and you're asking for 110, we got some room there. We can have some conversations, whether that's I'm having a conversation with you, whether that's I'm having a conversation with the hiring team, accounting, where we're kind of at, whether we have to go back to the customer and have a conversation with them as well. So that's just, an easier discussion to have. But if we are very out of alignment, then this isn't the position for you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And when you undervalue yourself, sometimes you might end up in a position that wasn't designed for you, wasn't meant for you, and you're ultimately doing yourself harm. And it's okay to not get a job. It's okay to not get an interview, and it's okay to not get an offer from somewhere, because that might not be the best place for you to be. There's no reason to undervalue yourself and to accept less than for an employment offer that's not going to, do you any good in the long run.
We were talking about changing industries a little bit too. So changing industries, Cassie, let's say that you're coming out of the Army and you were an infantry person, that hard to find an infantry job out there, so you want to get into logistics or cybersecurity. What should they be thinking about if they're going to be transitioning industries?
So again, back to expectations. So let's use cyber. So if they were infantry and wanted to transition to cyber, one of the things is you need to, again, research, find out, whatever industry you want to be in, are there certifications? Are there, better certifications to have than others? What certifications go with what type of opportunity? So like in cyber, there's a multitude of different levels and different certifications. Some of them are more, management level certifications. Some of them are more like installation type. So understanding what it is you want to do in that industry, and then what certifications best set you up for success in that industry. Is it a degree? Look up a job and find out, review the minimum requirements. And you'll start to see there's consistent certifications or consistent requirements that are in each and every single job description across companies, across positions, that those are the things that you need to have. The rest of them are going to be, either company specific or contract specific or, position specific, but there's always going to be consistent minimum requirements that are going to align across the board. And just making sure that if you are wanting to go from one industry to another, making sure you understand what are those consistencies and how can you go achieve them.
Yeah, and that's something I've heard somebody else call it a gap analysis, where, like you said, you look for the things that are constant all the way. So and the sooner you do that, because it takes time to get those things, is what you're saying too, right? I mean, you've got to be able to identify it and then fix the gap, so that by the time that you go to, and that brings us to our next thing, looking at job descriptions and resumes, how those things kind of match up. Let's just segue right into that part, Cassie.
One of the things I notice a lot of transitioning members will do is you guys tend to have very long resumes. I do not have the time to read 7 pages of a resume. I don't. Nobody does. And I had a woman, a very sweet lady who was at a job fair with me one time, who handed me a plastic pamphlet, and it had pages upon pages. And I mean, I think every job she's ever had in her entire life, and she was a fully grown woman, so there's, quite a few, every education, every certification, everything she thought that would make her a viable candidate was in this folder. She was spending money on these folders, on printing these paper, the ink, all of it, that time, the effort. And I looked her in the face and I said, darling, you are handing these to people and they are putting them in the trash. They are not looking at them. While I understand and appreciate the effort you are putting into this, you're doing yourself a disservice, because we can't. If we have 15 open requisitions, 15 different jobs, if I'm hiring for 15 different jobs and I have to have, candidates pre-screened, figuring out vetting them, who meets the criteria, who doesn't, getting them into interviews, having the conversations with the hiring teams, getting them into, offer stages and onboarding and all the things, there's a very long process. My onboarding process, that is after an offer is extended and accepted, my onboarding process is 52 steps long. Ooh. So it's lengthy. And so times that by however many candidates are in one requisition or one job applications, and then however many different hiring managers we could have. So when you're giving us a 15-page resume, there's no way I can give that the time and attention it deserves. And you are getting a disservice because I'm just not going to look at it when I have 100 other candidates who I can easily read their resumes. What you're wanting to do is realize that there is a person. Yes, I understand everybody preaches about the ATS systems and getting it through the AI and getting it through with the correct words. I will tell you a way to do that in just a second. But there is a person on the other end of the computer who is going to be looking at your resume and needs to be able to recognize the key skills, the experience, etc. And so just remembering that the recruiting team, the hiring team, whoever's going to be reviewing your resume is a person. As far as the AI systems, using those keywords, nobody wants to have to make 17 different resumes for 17 different jobs. And I completely agree with you. But what you can do is change your executive summary, that piece at the top that, you're always going to have like the consistent statements, obviously, but if you are looking at one specific job, one company that you are very interested in, you are very interested in this opportunity, picking up the keywords of that job description and putting that into your executive summary. And that way you're not revamping your resume 17 times every time you want to be able to apply to a different job. If your general, experience is laid out, timing, don't do just years, months and years. Mm-hmm. Make sure your months and years are on there because there are certain jobs, especially in my industry, that I have to count days sometimes to make sure somebody's qualified. And so the month and the year and making that makes it a lot easier on our end. But your executive summary can always change to kind of have those keywords to get you through the system and into the application for a live human to be able to sit there and review it.
That's a terrific tip about changing the executive summary. We did get a comment in LinkedIn here. Brad was asking the way things are right now, where there's so many, the companies have got the leverage. There's so much job seekers out there. How can you rise above the surface and be seen without being kind of lost in the sauce, I guess. And you mentioned the executive summary. I see a lot of resumes, and some of the better ones will have like a few bullet points of their key skills. And I can imagine that also changing those out, because if the key skills in the job description say A, B, and C, but you've got a whole bunch to pick from, pick the ones that are in your resume that match to the job description, right? Would that be another tip?
Yep. I said that the other day to a lady discussing her resume. You can do it that way. I just feel like the executive summary is just an easier way to get those keywords that system's going to want to use. But absolutely make sure you have the skills, obviously. Yeah. But, putting those at the top, the layout of a resume is incredibly important. And again, it kind of differs based on what you're wanting to apply to. But for us, for contractors, if you're looking at that job description, you look at the minimum requirements, I can tell you that those minimum requirements have come from the contract itself. Yeah. So we have to hit that mark, right? And so the most obvious one, do you have an active secret clearance? Not a lot of people put that on the resume. I honestly, personally can't tell you if that is allowed or not allowed. Some people do it, some people don't. But if you can, I absolutely recommend doing that. Your contact information at the top, your executive summary, if you have a clearance or not, what level it is, and then your did I say executive summary, and then your skills, and then degrees if they're required, or certs, or whatever's that, have that up at the top, because the easier that I can see it, the faster that I can see it, the more I'm going to spend time in your application. So if I see you've got your clearance, you've got a bachelor's degree in X, Y, and Z, or you have a secure cybersecurity certifications, Security Plus, and I can see that instantly, I'm going to keep going. And that can set it to where now I'm going to go into your experience. I'm going to start counting the months. I'm going to make sure you hit the years of experience requirement. I'm going to go through it that way. But you've already hook, line, and sunk me based off the top of your resume because it gave me exactly what I needed. And fun fact, LinkedIn profiles, exactly the same. Exactly the same. And those can actually do you harm too. I had a conversation with a gentleman who never going to remember the certification, but it doesn't matter. But he was going for a very high level cert. It is one like less than 10% of the nation have it. It was very elite. But the way that he phrased it in his LinkedIn profile was that it gave the idea that he had it. Not that he was going for it, not that it was estimated.
Yeah.
And so he was expressing his concerns and his frustrations to me because these recruiters be reaching out and he gets them all the time. And they're always like, oh, we're so excited to talk to you. Da, da, da. And he'd say, well, I don't have it yet. I'll have it in blank. And then they're like, okay, well, call me when you're done. Yeah. I said, okay, if we're looking for a very niche person, a very specific skill set, and we're on a timeline, they're not even opening your profile. If you are putting it in the very top where we can see it as soon as we see your name, or we don't even have to keep scrolling down and we see that right there, we are hitting the message button. We're not even going to the rest of it. If that certification is so desirable and it is so hard to find, why would they waste their time doing the rest of it? And so he realized he was actually harming himself by the way that he was marketing, that he's going for his certification. And so it can kind of go both ways. But
yeah, I mean, really, you've got if you're a job seeker, you have to know your industry enough to know what is the really tough to find skill. And if you've got it, you need to tell everybody and tell them really clearly. And if you don't have it, don't allude to it, like you said, because it just slows everything else down. But yeah, those are some great tips for how to stand out. I mean, it's really, I think, Brad was asking about how to stand out. Other things, job seekers, you have to kind of understand, are you in a field where there's lots of people applying, or are you in a field where there's it's really hard to find people? I mean, your job as a recruiter, Cassie, sometimes it's to wade through applications and sometimes it's to go hunt for hard to find people, right? Those are two different jobs.
Unicorns is what we call.
Yeah.
I do, I call it talent acquisition because you are acquiring people. That is what is my, personal skill sets, is that I'm able to start those conversations with people, able to kind of reel people into ITC. And I've acquired quite a few people just off of, conversations or off of, finding them on different websites. We've used ClearedJobs and, wonderful resource to be able to do that. And I've gotten quite a few people through and employees that way. But it is very different to go and acquire somebody versus wading through those resumes and those applications and trying to do. So you're very, very correct. There's two different skills and two different jobs within the same job. But
yeah. And it goes back to that expectations that we started off talking with. As a transitioning veteran, you just have to really have that awareness of which of those buckets are you in. I mean, it's not neither bucket is right or wrong, but they're real, and the way you swim in those buckets is going to help you stand out. Cassie, let's talk really a little bit more too about networking relationships. I know when I was coming out of the Navy, you heard this all the time. It almost felt like a cliche, but you know what? Cliches are valuable because they become cliches because they're so true, right? So what can we learn about networking relationships that veterans should know and how they can use those things?
Again, it goes back to, you have to remember that the recruiting team, the hiring team, whether hiring, they're all human. Okay. And I'm going to use an example of a friend of mine who, his first day is today. We're very excited and thrilled that he started, but that opportunity was through networking and through relationships that it made it to him through those relationships and that networking, because, he was a veteran, had logistics experience, had clearance, had this, that, was having a hard time, but was able to make connections by going to, see what's in your area, truly, first and foremost, see what's in your area or what area you're wanting to be in. Even if it's just LinkedIn, creating and building your network on LinkedIn, starting and having conversations with people, sometimes seeking out mentorship, saying, hey, I found that you were in this industry. I'm, interested in moving to this location or getting into this type of field. What advice do you have? What do you recommend? Building that conversation with that person, because at the end of the day, hiring teams are human and we want to hit the easy button if we can. And so my friend was able to receive this opportunity because we had already had the conversations and the discussions of what his skills and his experience was. And when this opportunity come up, that hiring manager was like, I already had this conversation with this gentleman. I already know his experience aligns, his personality fits, he works with the thing. And so he got into the interview process significantly faster than I believe he would have had he just had to apply. And that doesn't make him any less qualified. It doesn't make any of the other candidates who applied any less qualified or any less wonderful, but it's a billable position. If there's no physical body in that position, that company's not making money. And so it was easy to hit the easy button and go with what we knew versus trying to start the process over again. And so if you are able to make relationships and networks, especially with recruiters, and have those conversations, I call it my wait list. I have people that I've been talking to for years that it's not been the right fit or it's not been the right opportunity, but they're still very interested. I'm still very interested in them, and every opportunity that I think might be, a good fit, I bring that to them, because why would I want to do that twice?
Yeah,
or more than twice for an opportunity. If I already know I have this person, we've had this conversation, I know what they're looking for, they make a good fit, they're within price range, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to hit the easy button anytime that I can because my customers, my clients want that position filled. And the sooner that I can fill it, the better off everybody is. And so sometimes that doesn't mean going through hundreds of applications. Sometimes that means remembering I have this relationship with this candidate. This is their opportunity. Let's get them going.
Yeah, that is such a great story, the way you tell it. And like I said, good recruiters, and there's a lot of them out there. Good recruiters do exactly what you're talking about. That relationship is, if you're a good person, they may not have the right thing right now, but they don't want to lose you because they do your company doesn't make money unless there's somebody there. That's why you don't gap billets. Like you're in the military, they might say, "Oh, we'll just gap that billet for a while." No, ITC Defense is not making money if someone is not doing the work. So you need to put somebody there. We had a question that came in, and I will take the beginning part of this answer. The question was, what percentage of resumes actually reach the recruiters, meaning, through the ATS and stuff? I would just say when I talk to people across industries, because it really does mean different things depending on what job it is, what industry it is. I mean, there's no one size fits all stat that says X number make it through. But something that Cassie was also talking about with a relationship piece is, you want to find qualified people as fast as you can. And so typically recruiters, if they need to bring a certain slate of so many people to an interview, once they've got a good number, they've got to kind of stop to go move forward with those people so they don't keep searching forever and ever. But it would really depend upon whether or not like we mentioned before, is it a tough to find skill where the recruiter has to look for turning over every rock to find this high level, super cleared person? Or is it more of an entry level, I've got all of these applications. I've got 300 applications to go through. Once I get the first 10, I can move forward with those things. So that's what I would say, Cassie. And I don't know if you have any more specifics or any kind of color you could put in with your personal things about.
So again, this is industry knowledge and in my fields, but it depends on the system. I don't know that there is necessarily a percentage. I don't know a percentage to be able to answer that question specifically, but every system is a little different. And so my applicant tracking system that I have, I technically every single resume, every application. Now I can set it up to have questions that if you dependent on the answer, it might decline you sooner and automated. But mine's set up by like very simple stuff. Like, do you have a clearance? Yes or no? Or do you have this level of clearance? Yes or no? Or, if there's like very specific hard requirements that if you don't meet them, I'm not going to waste your time. And I can't waste mine, and I'm not going to waste yours. And so if I set it up that way, and it is a very, if you don't have a clearance and the job requires one, it will automatically send you an email in 12 hours because you deserve to know. You deserve an answer. I'm very heavy on that. You deserve to know one way or the other. And so those candidates will know relatively immediately. As we go through the system, I mean, every applicant tracking system is different. So it just depends on the way that they're able to set them up. But mine, I see every application comes through. I know exactly where it's at. And if it's automatically declined for the very specific questions that we set up, I still see them at the bottom of that requisition. I still know that they're there.
That's good information. I really appreciate that behind the scenes. Like you said, every ATS is different. Some companies have got super robust. Some don't have ATSs at all. Some have got middle of the road. I mean, it just depends on the company, but that's great information to throw back out there. Cassie, I just want to say, number one, thank you for joining us today. And is there anything that we left out that you wanted to say that we missed out on?
Nope, I think we hit all the marks. Thank you so much for the opportunity and to let me be here and have this conversation with you guys.
So it's Happy Military Monday for everybody. Cassie, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.